And so therefore, this is not a racial religion. This is not a cult-based religion. This is an international phenomenon. And the most important aspect about being a Muslim is not wearing certain clothing. It's not eating certain food or speaking any language in particular. Islam is the religion of Tawheed, which means the religion of the belief in one God. And we are taught that this belief in one God was shared by people throughout the planet from the beginning of time. And we are taught that the Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace and blessings be upon him, was the seal of a long line of prophets and messengers who came to every nation and every tribe. In the Quran, the book of scripture of the Muslims, in Surah An-Nahl, in verse 36, it tells us, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. And we have sent to every nation a messenger that they would worship Allah, they would worship the Creator, and they would stay away from false gods. And so we find that monotheism is not the property of any particular group, but it is the property of the whole of humanity. Those who have had the opportunity to travel have found that monotheism has been shared by people in all countries of all different languages. I had the opportunity to travel in many countries, and I questioned the historians and those people who were keeping the culture, the local culture. And I found that even in China, the concept Shang Ti in Mandarin Chinese refers to the one God. That even the ancient Vedas, within Hinduism, there is a belief in one God, because Hinduism itself is not one particular belief, in that there is even monotheism in the early scriptures. In Africa, there were many different nations who had the belief in one God. One of the pharaohs of Egypt, Akhenaten, whose wife was Nefertiti. You probably heard of her before. They say she was the first woman to be wearing cosmetics. This is in one of the ancient kingdoms in Egypt itself. History tells us that Akhenaten was struggling against the myriad of gods, the variety of gods in ancient Egypt, and he spoke about the power of Atun, the power behind the sun. Not to worship Ra, the sun god, but to worship the power behind the sun. In the Psalms of Akhenaten, there's very long psalms, and one of the sections reads as follows. It's speaking about the Creator, and it says, how legion or how varied are your works that are hidden from the face of men. O sole God, who is like no other, you made the earth according to your will, alone. Men, cattle, and all beasts, everything on earth that walks upon feet, everything that flies with its wings, foreign lands, Syria, Cush, and the land of Egypt. And you set every man in his place and supplied his needs. Everyone has his provisions and his allotted lifespan. Their tongues are diverse in speech, and their appearance likewise. Their skins are different, for you have differentiated the peoples. This sounds very much like Surah Al-Hujurat. This is like a chapter in the Quran, and you will find this in all the scriptures of monotheism. We are not sure that Akhenaten was a prophet, but we can see within his writings that Tawheed, that monotheism, was alive and well at that time in ancient Egypt. In other parts of Africa, you will find, like in the case of the San people of southern Africa, who are sometimes called the Bushmen. The San people are intensely sensitive to a governing life force, an invisible, all-present, omnipotent power beyond the comprehension of people. And to this force is attributed all creation and all manifestations of nature. The Akan people who live in Ghana, one of their sayings is, God is he who knows or sees all. This is one of their sayings. The Barundi people, living in Burundi also have a strong belief in the one God. It is part of the Bantu or N2 cosmic concept that looks at all the cosmic forces emanating from one point. The Xhosa people of southern Africa, they have a word, Kamata. When they use Kamata, it means Allah or God is the greatest. And they use this concept in their religion and in many of their ceremonies. The Ashanti people say, no one shows a child the supreme being. In other words, the child knows naturally about the supreme being. And so you find that in these traditional religions, contrary to what is taught in many religion courses, in the traditional religions, if you go back to the root, you will find the concept of monotheism. Ancient Egypt is probably one of the best documented areas of the ancient kingdoms before Christ. And you find that the further back you go, that the more the people were involved in Tawheed, in monotheism. Contrary to what is taught in many religion courses is that people first worshipped material things, and then later on, Semitic people from the Middle East taught the belief in one God. And so the religions of monotheism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam were developed, and then monotheism spread throughout the world. The Quran itself is contradicting this concept. As it says, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ. And we have sent to every nation, not to the Semitic, not a jins Sami, not to Semitic people only, but we have sent to every nation the belief in one God. In the Americas, there is a strong belief in one God, and we find the Cherokee Nation and the Wolf Clan in particular, whose oral traditions are still available to those who are able to access these traditions. Dr. Robert Crane, a former advisor to the President of the United States and a part Cherokee, was able to go to these oral traditions of the Wolf Clan. In it, he found that when they would begin traditionally their prayer, they would begin it by saying, Ya Allah. Now, he was a Muslim, or he is a Muslim. And for many years, people used to think that this was maybe a Hebrew saying, a Semitic saying. It is Semitic, but it is Arabic. And the Cherokee people looked to the east. The Cherokee people recognized there were people coming across the ocean long before Columbus. They used to have dwellings in America with over 100,000 people, 3-story buildings. We don't understand this about the Americas. We're stuck with stereotyping that gives us this concept of native people being savages who are only living in huts and had no religion, had no concept, and needed to be civilized. This is part of the racist, imperialistic type of history that has been taught over the years, which brainwashes people into disrespecting themselves, and even to look at documentation and not be able to extract information from this documentation because their minds are so brainwashed and they're so paranoid. The reality is that the native people here in the Americas had strong cultures. They had philosophy, pyramids, and even from the Americas itself, the concept of Tawheed, the concept of one God, was alive and well.